I wasn't a natural athlete growing up, but it's all I wanted to be. It's all I've ever wanted is to be an athlete. And I've always had big dreams, but I didn't know how to make them real. Self-doubt followed me everywhere. And no matter how hard I tried in sport or in life in general, I never felt like I was good enough. Life at home was tough. It exposed me to a lifestyle that I didn't want to be around, and ultimately it pushed me to become the person that I am today. I wanted to live a different life of health and vitality and striving to be the best I can be. Growing up, football was my number one, like running is for me today, and it just meant everything to me. I played only 16 minutes out of 80 in our grand final in 2014, and that shattered me. But as hard as that moment was, it was one of the most defining moments of my life, because I remember making a conscious decision in that moment to raise my standards. I said, this will never happen again. I'm going to kick the footy, run, lift weights more than I ever have before to put myself in that team. I realized in that moment that nobody was coming to save me. And if my coach didn't think I was good enough, then I wasn't good enough. Simple as that. Ultimately, it made me get to work. I've learned over my journey that success doesn't come from talent or luck. It comes from showing up repeatedly, over and over and over again. This is the story of how I went from a football bench warmer in 2014 to a running world record holder in 2024. The fastest person ever to have run around Australia. If you're feeling stuck, you're doubting yourself, you don't feel like you're good enough, or you're wondering if you can achieve your goals and dreams too, then this story is for you. Yes, you can. How do I know that? Because I've been there and I've felt exactly how you feel. I want to show you what is possible when you take personal accountability, put in relentless hard work, and stop holding yourself back. My name's Sean Bell. I'm an ultra marathon runner, a keynote speaker, and an online run coach and co-founder of JDS Run Coaching. We're a business dedicated to helping you smash your running goals. And I'm a 27-year-old, just an everyday normal guy who's learned to do hard things and ultimately achieve something that I never thought was possible. So now I'm into my next chapter of life where I'm dedicated to sharing more of my running journey, as well as helping other people achieve their running goals and sharing that too. So strap in, giddy up, and I wanted to create this video to show you a little bit about my life up to the point of running around Australia and where we're at now and what is next for me. Growing up, running was something that I always loved, but it wasn't my number one passion. That was football. I did school cross country each year, but it wasn't something that I was great at, nor was it something that I was overly passionate about. But running was always there for me. Whenever I felt like I was going through a tough time, I would put the shoes on and head out the door. And it's always been such a great support pillar in my life. I went through my school years with just one goal in mind, or maybe two. Playing AFL and dating the prettiest girl in school. And let's not talk about either of them because it didn't happen. But when I left school, I felt like I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to become a high school PE and outdoor ed teacher. So I finished school in 2015, and in 2016, I started my university degree, a Bachelor of Physical Activity and Health Science. 2016 was a challenging year for me. So I was still playing football at the Vermont Eagles, and I was playing the under-19s. I was 18 years old, turning 19. And in July of that year, one of my teammates passed away. And I just remember it absolutely devastated me and all of my teammates. And it taught me how precious life is, in that we can go to sleep and not wake up. And that's what happened to my teammate. I didn't know how it was possible, but as hard as that moment was, I thought, I'm going to make sure that for the rest of my life, I live a life dedicated to chasing my dreams and to helping others chase their own. When my mate passed away, I found myself running even more. It's always put me in a better mood when I feel sad or I feel down. So I decided to sign up for a 15K fun run and do the City to Sea run. I loved it, but it was still just something on the side for me because I wanted to continue playing football. Following the 15K run, I still wasn't doing great. And so in early 2017, my mum had recognized that I wasn't doing so well, and she generously took me with her to the US to go and see Tony Robbins. I was a bit of a skeptic. I'd never heard of him. I'm thinking, what's this 4-day seminar? I'd never done anything like it. And it really was a life-changing experience for me, but mostly because he shared the story of a guy called Stu Middleman. And Stu Middleman ran 85 Ks a day across America. And Tony was talking about the power of resilience and the human spirit. And I was so inspired by that, but ultimately I thought, well, this guy is just a predisposed genetic freak. How is that possible? Because the furthest I'd run at the time was a 15K run. After Tony Robbins, I went home to play football again because it was all I ever knew. And it was my last season of the under-19s. I was actually very lucky. Back then, you were allowed 5 players who were already 19 turning 20. So I was older and I still wasn't great, to be honest. I was far from the best player in my team, and yet my teammates voted me as the captain because of the standards that I lived at. And I helped them become better players as well by being the first on the track and the last one off it, and encouraging them to get the best out of themselves. We went on to win that grand final, and throughout that entire year, I just wasn't loving my footy as much. And so the fact that we went undefeated, the fact that we won the grand final was a clear indication that maybe I should try something else. And so 3 weeks after our football grand final was the Melbourne Marathon, and I said, well, let's give it a go. Now, I had done some training for it, but ultimately I was winging it. I didn't know anything about nutrition. I was relying on the aid stations there on the day. I did do a couple of long runs in prep, which was very interesting because I had to keep that a secret from my teammates, and I would do long runs in our bye rounds and I wouldn't post them on social media. So it was something that I knew that I was training for some time, but didn't want to share that because I was the captain of the team and should have been focused on our football. So by the time Melbourne Marathon Day came around, I was pumped. I didn't really know what to expect, and I was really proud of my first marathon, running it in 3 hours, 28 and 11 seconds. But because of the highs and lows, at the 38K mark, I had a really bad left quad cramp, and I thought it was almost over for me. And there was a couple of amazing things that happened. There was a mum who handed me a Zooper Dooper, which really helped getting some sugar into me. I had no energy because I hadn't been taking gels and all of the things that I needed. And there was an amazing guy who gave me encouragement and put his hand on my back. I got through those remaining 4Ks, and I knew that running was going to be it for me. It was something that I just loved, and I didn't know what I was going to do at that point, but I knew that long distance running was going to be a big part of my future. After the marathon, I was running a lot more, and it made me think back to Stu Middleman and his story. And I remember one night I just Google searched, has anyone ever run across or around Australia? And what I found out shocked me, but it inspired me so much and it gave me belief. I found out about a vegan couple in their 60s, Jeanette and Alan, who ran a marathon a day for an entire year. In fact, they ran 366 marathons in 366 days. And to this day, unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to meet them, would love to, but they were such inspirations to me at a young age, because ultimately at that 20-year-old mark, when I'd found marathon running and I'd started to want to run further and further, it gave me hope that if these people respectfully can achieve this in their 60s, then maybe I could run around Australia and honor my teammate too. So I started to research even further, and I found out about a guy called Dave Alley who ran around Australia and was the record holder. He ran a total distance of 13,791 kilometers in 175 days, 4 hours and 49 minutes. But I also learned that there is a record, it's a world record, and there's a record-breaking moment at 13,383 Ks. And the reason that is because the first ever run around Australia was a man named Ron Grant back in 1983, and that was his distance, 13,383 kilometers. So to make it fair to the runners who are to come and running around Australia, because roads change and road laws change, and it's really hard to it would be impossible to line it up exactly the same. Therefore, it is a record-breaking moment at 13,383. And Dave also was the world record holder. He'd done that in 169 days, 15 hours and 31 minutes. So I was incredibly inspired by Dave, and I thought, I'm going to try and track this guy down, see if I can find his number and just give him a call. If I can learn more information about running around Australia, well, that will be really special. At the time, I didn't think that I was capable of becoming a world record holder. That was honestly, from the start, never my intention. I just wanted to honor my teammate, make a difference for charity. I love adventure, and I wanted to push my body and mind because I've always wanted to be this athlete. Through my university years, to support myself, I was a bartender. And I remember one day I had a 30-minute lunch break and I gave Dave Alley a call. I'd found his number and I thought, I've got nothing to lose, let's give him a ring. Dave was so supportive. He gave me a lot of insights and he said, mate, if you ever get the chance to meet me, if you're up my way where I live in northern New South Wales, well, let's meet. And so I felt inspired by that. Again, it solidified that this is something that I want to do. I want to run around Australia. I don't know how yet, but I know my why. In early 2018, I announced the goal publicly that I was going to run around Australia in 2021, call the journey Jog for Joey, and honour my teammate. Shortly after I publicly announced my goal to run around Australia, I ran my first ultra marathon, a 60k run on the Great Ocean Road of Victoria. I loved that 60k race, but I knew that I needed to make some changes because, again, I realized that winging it wasn't working too well. I went too hard early and I didn't fuel myself correctly again. So I thought I need to try and find someone who's done this stuff before and get some help and support. I wanted to find someone who'd done something similar. I made running my world and I started listening to many podcasts, watching many running videos in all my spare time. And I came across Samantha Gash on the Rich Roll podcast. And Samantha had run across South Africa and she'd also run across India for World Vision. So she was someone who had not only done these big back-to-back days of running, but also connected him to a cause that she was passionate about. And that inspired me because it was similar to what I wanted to achieve with my run around Australia. I started following her on social media and I saw that she was an ambassador for the Bali Hope Ultra in 2018. The Bali Hope Ultra is an 84k race that puts disadvantaged Balinese children through school. I thought, that sounds incredible. I'm going to try and sign up to the next year's event if they're doing it again. I remember receiving a WhatsApp message in July of 2018 from Tom Hickman, who's the race director of the Bali Hope Ultra. I was in Europe at the time, actually in Croatia, and I remember getting this message and just being so pumped. I'm going to run across Bali in 2019. I can reach out to Samantha Gash, considering that she was also an ambassador for the 2018 event. If I share with her that I'm doing it the next year, she may be able to give me some advice. And Samantha was incredible. She said, let's catch up for a coffee. We chatted for 2 hours and I was asking her questions about running around Australia. And the funny thing was, I actually ran to that coffee and I was running everywhere at the time. I was running 7 days a week. I was running 100 Ks a week or even more, up to 120, with a body that really wasn't capable of running that distance fast or without breaking down. And so she said, mate, you've got to strip it right back. You've got to understand that there's different types of running involved and strength training, mobility. It's a really holistic approach to be a great runner. And she said, look, I'm not a coach, but maybe I can connect you with some people who will be able to help you. And 2 days later, I got a phone call from a guy named Jace, and I shared with him my goal to run around Australia, honor my teammate. I wanted to do it in 2021. And while I'd already announced that goal publicly earlier that year, I believe that through that conversation with Jace, that was really when we set the goal. Because Jace said, okay, if you're going to do it in 2021, then I want you to find out the best time of year to run, to start your run, because obviously you're going to have different weather conditions throughout. I want you to do 60 Ks a day, no more than that, because that's already going to be a big distance for us to build up to. But I wanted it to be an ultra marathon, not a marathon per day. So he said, look, if you work hard for 3 years, you're consistent week in, week out to your sessions, we put some events in front of you for you to do and tick off along the way, then I'm confident that you could do that in 2021. Shortly after that phone call with Jace, I was on a holiday with my brother on the Gold Coast and we had the opportunity to meet Dave Alley. Dave was incredibly generous with his wisdom. He told me the right time of year that you should be running around Australia weather-wise. He said, look, mate, you have to time it so you get to Darwin and the top end of Australia in the dry season, because otherwise there's risk of them shutting roads and all sorts of things. So I learned so much from Dave, and it was the start of our friendship. Through working with Jace, very quickly he taught me an acronym called EXA: endurance, quality, strength, and absorption. And he said, this is how we're going to train you to run around Australia. Ultimately, endurance means your long runs. Then quality means sessions like hill sprints, fartlek, tempo runs. Strength is your time in the gym, strengthening your bones, your muscles, and your tendons and your ligaments. And absorption is recovery. So that might look like at the beginning, a full rest day. it might be a recovery walk, it then might progress into a recovery run, as well as other forms of recovery like yoga and mobility. I told Jace that Jeanette and Alan had run 50 marathons in 50 days across New Zealand before they ran around Australia. And I said, do you think that that is something that we could work towards together? And he was like, mate, absolutely. This is something that I think you're closer to than you think. You actually are strong. You've done this 60K Ultra. You've done your Melbourne Marathon. You've put in some consistent running weeks. And yes, there's some big areas to improve, but I think that you could do that early next year. Let's do a 16-week training block and let's have a go at it. So January 4 rolled around, and from Jan 4, 2019 until Feb 22, I was just a young 21-year-old guy and I ran 50 marathons in 50 days. It was unbelievable, a life-changing experience where I was able to honor my teammate, and through the campaign called Jog for Joey, raised $30,000 for the Compassionate Friends charity. After finishing the 50 marathons in 50 days, Jay said to me, now let's work on your speed, because if you want to race well in Bali Hope Ultra, you also need to be fast. So we backed that I had the Ks and the legs, and we focused on a lot of speed work, quality sessions before the Bali Hope Ultra. I had a couple of weeks to recover after the 50 and 50, and then a 10-week training block where 8 weeks were focused on speed work and then a 2-week taper going into the race. And it was perfect. It really exceeded my expectations. I went there to race as hard as I possibly could and leave it all out there. But ultimately I was able to win that race running the 84K with 1,700 meters of elevation gain in 8 hours, 14 minutes and 42 seconds. So achieving that goal, again, it gave me so much belief, and I was like, Jace, we're doing this. I'm going to run around Australia in the future. In May 2019, I also finished my university degree. And because it was a Bachelor of Physical Activity and Health Science, within my degree, I was able to achieve my certificate 3 and 4 in fitness. So I was able to start working as a personal trainer and get out of my bartending job. I loved that. I started working for myself as a sole trader, as well as working for Intrepid Fitness. And that's where I did most of my work for the next few years. After the Bali Hope Ultra in 2019, I was stubborn and I learned a valuable lesson. My coach Jace had told me, hey mate, you need a rest. Recover, you've done the 50 and 50, now Bali Hope, give your body a break. And I was committed to do another big run because I realized that the Vermont Eagles senior team had a bye on the weekend of the 27th and 28th of July. And the 30th of July was my teammate's passing anniversary. It was the 3rd year. And so I thought, well, this is right near his passing. This is an opportunity, again, to do something great for charity. I've just done Bali Hope. I've run really well. Surely I'm capable. And Jace was right. I was able to run 170K in that 24 hours, but truly I wasn't ready. And what happened was I had an injury where towards the end of the run, I couldn't run at all. I was just walking. What I found out was I had a severely inflamed peroneal tendon. And what that meant was I was out of action for some time. I had to rehab it with a physio, and he's like, mate, you're not really going to run for 4, 5, 6 weeks. But that was also a blessing in disguise, because through that, I started working with a physio, Yanni, who became a key part of my team going forward. Yanni identified that I had a significant heel strike. My foot was landing well out the front of my body, and suggested that I go to a local running coach to improve my running technique. That's where I started running with Beck, who taught me the importance of landing on your midfoot rather than your heel. Now, this is not for everyone. There's some incredible runners who are heel strikers, including Olympians. But for me, it wasn't working. I had that injury, and she was confident I could make some changes to become a more efficient runner. And so we worked on that, and it took 4 or 5 months. But ultimately, I was then able to become a runner where I would land more on my midfoot or even forefoot than my heel. So I completely changed my mechanics. It was a really interesting experience. From August 2019 through to December 2019, I was just focusing on learning this new running technique, and I wasn't doing any more races or events. In October 2019, I made the decision that with my future run around Australia, I would change the charity that I was going to support. I decided to stop working with the Compassionate Friends charity and said that I was going to support Make-A-Wish, because I wanted to chase my dream and run around Australia and directly help sick kids achieve their number one wish. I felt like that was a really authentic charity to me, and I could see that direct link and direct impact. I was chasing my dream, and through that, the money we would raise would help these sick children achieve what's most meaningful to them. After having a great experience with Coach Jace and Coach Beck and learning so much from them, I thought I want to become a running coach as well and help other people with their running too. So I asked them how to go about it, and they recommended that I do my level 1 recreational run coaching with Athletics Australia. It taught me the fundamentals, and I wanted to go even further with my study. I wanted to learn how to tailor training programs to the individual. Just like I was doing as a personal trainer, I wanted to be able to help people no matter their background in running. I wanted to be able to build a training plan based around their lifestyle so that they could achieve their goals. Then in 2020, COVID hit the world and we went into a global pandemic. During COVID, I was still working online as a personal trainer, but I'm not someone who can sit still very easily. So I presented Jace and DJ an opportunity. I said, would you want to go into a new business together? I've got an idea. We could work out what we call it together, but ultimately we're going to help people run their first marathon. And the reason that I wanted to do that was because I had several people who had seen my exponential progress with running and say to me, hey mate, like, who's your coach? Can they coach me as well? And I felt terrible, but Jace was at capacity. He couldn't take on any more new athletes. So I said to Jason DJ, what if we could create something that isn't a tailored training program, but it's more generic in nature? It's more about helping people run a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, and ultimately their first marathon. And we could do that by creating a video library with strength training, with nutrition videos, with running technique videos. Let's build something that feels incredibly supportive, but allows us to be able to coach more people. And so we got to work. COVID gave us time and I didn't sit still. I worked as hard as I possibly could with these guys on this goal. And it was a fun year in some ways. And it sounds silly to say that, but I think when you're so passionate about what you do, it really gave me purpose at what was otherwise a challenging time. And so I'm grateful for that year because ultimately First 42K, which is now JDS Run Coaching, wouldn't exist if it wasn't for COVID. With my own running in 2020, I was actually going to do Bali Hope Ultra again. I wanted to go back in May 2020 to defend the title and have a crack over there, meet some great people. And unfortunately with COVID happening, it wasn't possible. So what I then decided to do was a run here in Melbourne. Obviously we couldn't go far and I wanted to do another 24-hour run also to prove to myself that I've grown as an athlete nearly a year on from that previous July. And so I said, let's run 24 hours, let's make a difference, still fundraising for the Bali Children Foundation, which I would have been doing anyway if I was running in the Bali Hope Ultra again. That's one of the requirements of the Bali Hope Ultra. So I had a crack at the 24-hour run. That was in May. It was progress. I didn't have a perineal injury. I was able to finish the run running this time, not walking. And I covered 181 Ks. So 11 Ks further than I had done the July previous. So really happy. In 10 months, I'd progressed 11K at that 24-hour distance. Again, these events just instilled so much confidence in me that I have this big goal in the future to run around Australia. If I can tick these off and get better, then I'm moving in the right direction. Following that 24-hour run, exercise restrictions tightened even further here in Melbourne. And I'm sure many Melbourne people can remember we could only go out and run for 1 hour a day. We were limited to 1 hour of exercise outside of our home per day, which was nuts, but I had to think about my training very strategically. I was very lucky in some ways being a personal trainer that I had access to gym equipment that other people wouldn't have had. So I brought home a lot of equipment and I would train strength training from home. And then I would use my hour to do more speed work. So I focused on quality sessions and I said, I want to go for a goal that isn't going to require too much running in terms of time. It was more about strength training and fast running. And yes, there was of course still easy runs along the way to build up to this goal, but Jace and I worked together on working out how I could train with it to still get plenty of quality in without so much running. I was focused on doing less Ks. We thought you've already got a good base in terms of endurance through the last couple of years working together. Let's focus on more speed work and change the goal again. What can you do through COVID to feel like you're progressing forward to this goal and perhaps learn more about running? So in December 2020, I ran an unofficial sub 3 hour marathon. I wanted to have a crack at my fastest marathon yet. And I ran with my mate Cody. We ran from Port Melbourne to Beaumaris and back. And I ran the time of 2 hours, 53 and 18 seconds. So absolutely stoked to get that, but there is still a big part of me that wants to go back and get an official sub 3 because I've never ever done an official sub 3 to this day. And yes, it counts. I know I ran that distance, recorded it on my watch, but at the same time, it doesn't count because it wasn't a part of an official event. So keen to go back and get an official sub 3 marathon one day as soon as I can. That will be awesome. In early 2021, it looked like we were finally getting out of lockdown, and then COVID decided to throw another curveball. Dan Andrews sent us back into lockdown. It was a snap 5-day lockdown, and I remember it so clearly because it was just before my next race, which was the Hut to Hut 2021. I was about to take on my biggest challenge yet, which was 100K in Victoria's Alpine region, 6,000 meters of elevation gain, very technical terrain. It was not messing around, and this was going to be one hell of a challenge. And unfortunately, what happened was we went into a snap 5-day lockdown, which meant that the lockdown finished on Wednesday night, 12 a.m., Thursday morning. So the race was meant to start on the Friday at 5 a.m. And that meant that the race directors of Hut to Hut only had 29 hours to safely set up a 100K course, which would take a lot of time to be able to do. So it was impossible for them to be able to set up the course safely for the runners. They had to say, we can't do this event. What they decided to do was pivot. They said that they could set up the Archie's 50 course, which is really 54K, and we could do that on back-to-back days. We do it the first day and then the second day in the opposite direction. So that's what we did. That was my next challenge, 54Ks and 2,600 meters of elevation gain. It was a big challenge, but I think because I'd done the 50 marathons in 50 days and had a lot of experience running back to back, I found it better than I'm sure that I would have if I did the 100K. Obviously doing 100K like that with more elevation gain in one hit would have been significantly harder, but it really worked into my favor, that event. And again, it was a good result. It inspired me to continue to grow as an athlete and work towards this goal of running around Australia. In April 2021, First 42K launched. I was so excited that we were finally live with a web app to help people smash their first marathon. In late 2021, COVID was still a thing, and I was inspired to take on another challenge to continue to build my body and mindset. So I took on the David Goggins 4x4x48 challenge, which is where you run for 4 miles or 6.4 kilometers every 4 hours for 48 hours. And I looked at this event and I thought, it's not going to be that hard. And that's because I knew that I had experience running for 24 hours twice. And I went into this run or this challenge definitely underestimating it. And it was a big learning experience for me because I stuffed up. What I said that I would do is I would get faster with every single run. So how it works is if the run starts, well, for me, I remember it started at 4 p.m. So I started on a Friday at 4 p.m. You're meant to go run your 4 miles or 6.4K, and then you run again at 8 p.m., 6.4K, and then again at 12 a.m., 6.4K, and so on. And so I said to myself, I'm going to get faster every single time. So I started at a conservative pace, an easy pace, and progress. I greatly disrespected that challenge and it led to an injury, not immediately, but afterwards. So what happened was, because I was trying to get faster every single time, in the last 24 hours, I was running at such a stupid pace where there wasn't enough recovery time. So I think after I'd done about 6 runs, I was running at around a 4:20 pace for my next run for the 6.4K. Then it progressed, then it progressed, then it progressed. I remember my last 2 runs were at a 3:52 pace and then a 3:38 pace. So I progressed from a tempo to a threshold to a VO2 max pace and was just pushing my absolute limit. I was having fun doing it, running alongside my mate Beardy, but it was brutal. And I didn't give myself enough recovery time on the other side. And it was a week later, had that craving for speed work again, decided to do a fartlek session and tore my calf. I tore my soleus. It was a grade 2 tear, which set me back for another, I think, 4 or 5 weeks. And it was challenging. As someone who loves running so much, it was challenging to be in that position because I just felt silly that I put myself in that position by not respecting that challenge enough. We didn't get out of lockdown in Melbourne until October 2021. So it was crazy the amount of time that we were in lockdown. And also it was really clear to me that I wasn't going to be able to run around Australia in 2022, let alone 2021. So yes, it was going to be pushed back a lot further than what I had originally thought, but I had to try and look at the positives that, okay, this is going to give me more time to prepare both my body, my mind, and all the logistics as well. So I thought, well, what can I do? I was coming out of this calf injury, and there was a couple of races that I was looking at, as well as I had a charity event coming up, which I'll get to shortly. And so I decided to do the 2 Bays 56, and the 56K there is beautiful. It's from Cape Schanck to Dromana and back. I really didn't have great preparation. I had about a 6-week build up after my calf injury, and also even had COVID 2 weeks out from the race. So I towed the start line thinking this is going to be terrible, but let's just give it my best and see what happens, and pleasantly surprised myself running a really solid race. And now I've got the itch when my body is recovered to be able to go back one day, because I was able to run a 5 hours, 7 minute, 33 second race. And I want that sub 5. But it's a beautiful event, great community. And again, it just instilled confidence I was on the right track. And so a couple of months after that, or a few months after that, was my next big challenge, which was the Cairns to Melbourne run. I've been working hard for many years to save to run around Australia. And so with this Cairns to Melbourne run, I put all of my money into this run, and even still, all of my savings wasn't enough. So thankfully I had some support from family and friends, but it was a big thing to take on. And ultimately, I'm so glad that I did the run, because it set me up for future success. But in saying that, it was also really challenging, and I'll talk more about the other side of the run soon. But the run itself, so I came up with this idea of running from Cairns to Melbourne because it was 3,600 kilometers. And I thought, well, I could run 60 Ks a day for 60 days to raise $60,000 for Make-A-Wish. And the reason I like that 60, 60, 60 is, as I mentioned earlier, Jace had shared with me, with the run around Australia in the future, I think 60 Ks a day is a really good target. So I thought, okay, well, this is smaller scale, but it's still big. It's still nearly 2 months, 2 months of running. Let's see if I can hold that 60K a day. And Cairns to Melbourne was full of highs and lows, full of surprises and devastation. I found out on the evening of day 7 that my coach had passed away on the Friday night, which was day 5. And the call came from my other business partner, DJ, and it absolutely crushed me. And I thought, how am I going to get through this? How am I going to continue running from Cairns to Melbourne, knowing that this is going to be a really hard time for me? He was more than a business partner. He was my coach. He was my mentor. He had all I wanted in life was to be an athlete, and he brought that out of me. He brought the best out of me, and got me into a position where I could run from Cairns to Melbourne, where I wouldn't have thought, I could get to that. I know that was the goal. I always wanted to run around Australia, but to do it so strongly, even now, it's been nearly 2.5 years since that, and it's so hard to talk about. My body protected me a lot, because I knew that I had to get it done no matter what. I'd made the commitment to Make-A-Wish. I'd made the commitment to myself, to my support crew. And of course, I made the commitment to Jace that, hey, I'm going to do this. I made the commitment to my family. I made the commitment to my clients that I had stepped away from coaching and working with at the time, whether that was personal training or run coaching through First 42K. So it was big, and it was fucking up. I look back now, and now I've got the perspective of running around Australia and running a lot further per day. around Australia. I'll talk more about that soon, but was able to average 84 Ks a day. Cairns to Melbourne in the end was 66 Ks a day, but to have to run and grieve at the same time was really tough, and my body protected me. It knew that I had a job to do, and so I was able to get it done. But I had a huge crash after the run, and I was just in pain. I was grieving so much. It was so hard that time. June 2022, I'd spent all my money to do this run that I really wanted to do, to make a difference for Make-A-Wish, chase my dream and help them chase theirs. And my business partner was gone. We chat on the phone nearly every single day. It was like so hard emotionally, but then also I came back and I had to work really hard straight away. And fucking hell, it was so tough. But I'm really proud of Cairns to Melbourne. You know, we had very little resources. We were a small team, and one of my best mates, Maxi, was able to help me out and give up 60 days of his time to support me the entire way, which was special. I had other support crew do little stints, and I think it was about 16 people all up. So it's a lot of people to help one guy run. And I guess it was really my first taste of something so big back to back to back. And when I came out of Cairns to Melbourne, it really reinforced that this is something that I want to do. Despite running with grief, despite the pain that I was in, I still found a way to really love the journey. And that's what I found with running, and running for a cause, and running as adventure back to back days. It was something that it's hard for me to describe to people, because I was living in my own world. I was out there running day after day after day. You could ask me, Shawnee, what date is it? I wouldn't know. You could ask me, what day is it? I might know. So it was pretty special. Usually, you know, I would reply something like it's day 33 or it's day 47. I just knew the world that I was in at the time, and I needed that. I needed to focus on one step at a time, particularly with the grief. And that taught me so much about how to then approach the run around Australia in the future. So without Cairns to Melbourne, I couldn't have run around Australia. It was a way to prepare physically. It was a way to prepare mentally. It was a way to show sponsors what I'm capable of, and, you know, have them help out with the run around Australia and contribute. Businesses got behind the run to support and, you know, believed in the mission that I was trying to achieve for Make-A-Wish. So it was huge. And I think now, sitting back, it's been 3 months since I ran around Australia, and I still don't really understand the magnitude. I think maybe it'll sink in one day. A lot happened over my journey to running around Australia. But I sit here now and I hope that both Jace and Joey are proud, because, you know, I really wanted the best for everyone involved, and I left it all out there. No part of me thinks that I could have done more with this run around Australia. It was fucking massive. So Cairns to Melbourne raised $100,000 for Make-A-Wish, and that money helped to make many kids' wishes come true. And through the last few years supporting Make-A-Wish, I've been blessed to meet some Make-A-Wish families. I met Claude, who was a young basketball enthusiast, and he had a wish to meet Ben Simmons, and he was able to meet Ben Simmons and play one-on-one with Ben Simmons, which is pretty cool. I've met another couple of kids who are doing it really tough, and that's hard. It definitely puts it in perspective when everyone says running around Australia was so tough. How did you get going every day? But I was choosing to hurt. I was choosing to do something hard. It was volunteer suffering rather than just suffering that no child asks for, you know. And I remember I would consciously think, if I was spewing on the side of the road, at times on all fours with blood pouring out of my nose at the same time, this is so hard, but I just have to keep taking another step, because that's what these kids do. They fight. And at the end of the day, I'm choosing to do this. I had to keep reminding myself of that. And I'm spewing because I'm making myself do this. These kids aren't making themselves do what they're going through. And that was a powerful perspective that I knew I needed. So after Cairns to Melbourne, I felt really confident. I ended up running 4,001 Ks in 60 days, did the extra one just to make sure of it. But obviously it was meant to be at the beginning, 3,600. So after Jace passed away, I felt inspired. I felt empowered to level up for him. He'd always made me believe in myself. He'd instilled so much belief in me, and that made me believe in myself. And sometimes that's all it takes, is having someone who just backs you in, and it really helps you out. And so when he'd passed away, as hard as that was to even run 60K a day, I said, no, let's level up. He taught me, if you think you can do more, then you go and do it. You get it done. And so all of a sudden I was like, okay, let's push the envelope a bit more. And it was 4,001 Ks in 60 running days is what I finished with. It was total 62 days. I had to have 2 days in the middle. After day 30, I had to fly to Sydney for his memorial and then fly back. But with that run, that's what I needed to do. I guess because it wasn't a FKT or anything like that with consecutive days, it made it okay to do that. And obviously it was really important for me to do that, to go and honor him. And I'm really glad that I did that. But I came back and I was around Casino, which is not too far from Ballina. So I flew out of Ballina to Sydney for the memorial, flew back to Ballina, drove out to Casino, and that's where I'd finished running. So started from there again. When I got back to Casino, I felt a little bit better because yes, it was really tough to say goodbye, but also the memorial was more of a celebration of his life. And I felt like I'd honored Coach, but now I had to get back and run and really make him proud. So that's what I did, and the days just got bigger and bigger. I was running better. I think my first day back was 85 Ks, which makes sense as well, I guess, after a couple of lighter days. I did keep running when I was in Sydney for the memorial, but just enough to keep the body moving. And yeah, I came back and I was running really well. I had a fun support crew in, Team Two Dads they were, which was Dale and Liam and Maxi. Overall, I was really happy with Cairns to Melbourne. Yes, it put me in a tough position following the run, but I knew that it was also going to be integral to helping me going forward with making the Run Around Australia happen. And after the run, I had a really awesome opportunity where my mate Josh was going overseas. So he had an apartment in Currumbin, right on the beach on the Gold Coast. I'd always lived in Melbourne, but always wanted to live in the Gold Coast. And here was my opportunity where I could jump in, sublet his apartment, pay his rent while he's gone, and that would be helping him out, but he was also massively helping me out by giving me the opportunity to experience the Gold Coast. And through that, I met some great people, some other like-minded runners, and I would join the Salt Social Run Club every single week. It was a great experience to be up on the Gold Coast post the run. I joined 5am Club, which was a bunch of old boys who train every morning. It was unstructured training. I sort of had to do that for the first 3 months following my run from Cairns to Melbourne because there was a lot of fatigue. I was playing a lot of tennis with my housemate Scotty, and I slowly got my body back. And from my own training perspective, what I noticed was I lost a lot of speed. So I was craving fast running. I was craving doing speed work, but I had to take it slowly because that was still 4,000 Ks in 60 days. So my body just needed to come back from that, and I needed to do it appropriately. And only once I'd given the body a bit more rest and recovery time could I then perform and run faster. But one of the challenges of coming back from the run with no money was that I went to the Gold Coast. I had this great opportunity, but at the same time I needed to support myself, and I was trying to build first 42K. So I needed the day to work on first 42K. Pretty much my day was wake up early, train, work on first 42K all day, and then work as a bartender at night, which I hadn't done for years. But I wanted to work as a bartender so that I could work at night and work the weekends in the afternoon and at night to make some more money to support myself while I was building first 42K. So it was a challenging experience, but I wouldn't change it. It was beautiful. It was full of highs and lows as well. I remember the first couple of months, I missed home. I wanted to come back to Melbourne, but I slowly settled. And I think if you've ever moved state or something like that, you understand that feeling. I was a bit homesick, but at the same time, I was slowly building my network of friends, and it was something that was a big change for me. I didn't envision that I would go back to bartending after running from Cairns to Melbourne, but I also had this opportunity come up to go to the Gold Coast, and I chose to work on First 42K during the day, which meant that I needed to do that job to look after myself. So it was about 9 months in the end. I was on the Gold Coast, or 8 months, I think, July till March. So yeah, 8 months. What happened in that time as well was after Jace had passed away, we didn't have our head coach of First 42K. So yes, I was a level 1 coach with Athletes Australia. I had my Cert 3 and 4 in fitness, a bachelor's degree of physical activity and health science, I had some knowledge, but I wasn't a experienced running coach like Jace was at that point in time. And, we had clients to look after. So it was something that I needed to do on top of trying to build First 42K and work as a bartender and try and recover from this run. I also needed to study. I needed to get better and I needed to level up. So I took on the level 2 Athletics Australia recreational running course, and that was awesome. I learned so much, and I learned through that how to program people one-on-one. So actually find out what's the person's goal, what's their running experience, what's their background with sport and fitness, what's their injury history, and then ultimately work it around their lifestyle to build them a custom training program. And that was special to be able to learn that. And it's something that obviously we've been able to bring to a lot of our runners now at JDS. And, we have so many runners today who are doing different levels of races, some doing their first marathon, some even their first 10K, through to we're currently training Jay, who's running 33 marathons in 33 days next year. And it's huge to see what some of our runners are working towards. We're currently coaching Timmy Franklin, who just recently ran around the world. So it's special to be able to do what I do now, but it's taken a journey to get there. And if I think back to that time, it was a lot to take on, but through that course, I met Ursh, and she was also learning to become a level 2 coach as well. And Ursh and I went for a run, we got on really well. And when Joshy came home after 4 months of his trip overseas, it was time for me to move out of his apartment. And I didn't want to leave the Gold Coast. By now, I wasn't homesick, I was loving it, and I didn't want to leave. And Ursh had an opportunity for me where she had a spare room, I could live with her, and it was the best time. Like, had a great time living with Scotty, and I had a great time living with Ursh. It was just good memories from the Gold Coast, and that was a period of big change for me, where I had to work hard with the bartending, but also by the time I ended up leaving the Gold Coast again in March, I was in a much better position with First 42K. Through putting in that hard work, we were coaching a lot more runners. I think I had at the time about 25 or 30 tailored athletes, and was doing a lot better with the business. And it was great to see so many of our runners training for a key event. And one of those events was the Bali Hope Ultra, which we had several runners training for due to our partnership with Bali Hope Ultra. And it was just an exciting time for me, big change. And basically, I made the move back to Melbourne in March because I wanted to leave no stone unturned. What I mean by that is, for the 5 years from my first marathon in 2017, when I started to get into running properly, through to running from Cairns to Melbourne in April 2022, I'd lived in Melbourne. Afterwards, I moved to the Gold Coast. So I'd always been in Melbourne. And that way, in Melbourne, I had my family support. I had my best mates. I had my experts like my physio, my strength coaches. I had my podiatrist. I had my massage therapist. I had a real team that I'd been working with for some years. And I thought, well, I can still visit the Gold Coast. I can still come up here regularly. But if I truly want to run around Australia and do it the best I possibly can, then I think moving back to Melbourne is the key. And the reason why it was also so important to me was because the goal had changed again. In November 2022, I announced that I was going to attempt the record for the fastest run around Australia. And that was a big change for me, because initially when I set out to run around Australia back in early 2018, I didn't think that I would be going for the record. I didn't think that I was capable of a record attempt, but it was so far away to me. It really seemed impossible at the time that I could run what was the record from the research I'd done in Dave Alley. He'd averaged something like 79.5 Ks a day. And I didn't think that I was capable of that. And so when I set the goal in 2018, it wasn't something that I thought I could do. But when you do years and years and years of hard work and reps and consistency and events and trial runs and these sorts of things, it just builds belief and ultimately build your body. You recover better, you perform better. And that's what was happening with me. So November 22, I go and I'm in a podcast studio and I put on social media, I re-announced to the world that I was running around Australia, but this time it would be different. Instead of just running around Australia for a charity, instead what I was doing is supporting Make-A-Wish still, but this was going to be a record attempt. And I knew that if I had a record run around Australia, it would also enhance fundraising, because there's a lot of people charity running now. And I knew that if I put a record attempt as part of the run, well, more people will want to follow it to see, will he get there, will he not? And so in 2022 November, that's what I decided that I was going to do. With that in mind, it was time to head back to Melbourne. I just thought that I could be in a better position if I moved back to Melbourne to truly leave no stone unturned. From when I got back from Cairns to Melbourne in June 2022 until April 2023, I coached myself. And it was something different. I'd always had Jace coaching me, and then all of a sudden I was coaching myself and done my level 1, and I was about to start my level 2 run coaching course. So I was confident that I could program myself and I could learn from that. And once I got more skills from my level 2, well, that really helped me again. And I knew that I was on the right track. I decided that I wanted to do Coburg 24-hour, which is a 24-hour race around an ATH track, April 2023. And that was because the race was from Saturday, the 15th of April until Sunday, the 16th of April. And the 15th of April, 2022 was the date that Jace passed away. And so exactly 1 year after was another 24-hour run. And to me, that was a sign. I just moved back to Melbourne. It was in Melbourne. It was a proper race against other competitors. I would have some good support by having some other people to work with, to learn from, to chase down. And it was a good opportunity to do. So I thought, I'm going to set a goal, which might sound crazy to a lot of people because it was a big jump from my previous best. But I thought, I want to run 200 kilometers. That is my goal, 200 Ks. And so my best previously was 181. It was a big jump. But for Jace, I wanted to do it for Coach. And I remember not long before the race, I got this tattoo, Coach Loveheart, and I was like, we're doing this together. And it was so beautiful to be able to get that done and run 201.627 kilometers. So 1 mile extra. I was pretty broken. We had 70 mil of rain overnight. It was tough conditions, but I was able to get that job done. And that was epic because I had 2 A races in 2023 and that was one of them. So I knew leading up to that race, when I was on the Gold Coast, I'd have to work on my speed as well. It's not just endurance to run for 24 hours. If you want to cover 200 Ks, you've got to be fast too. So it worked well that I was really trying to improve my 5K, and I was doing a lot of park runs, and I ran my 5K PB on, I can't remember the date, but it was in February, and it was a 17:33, Feb 2023, and that led in beautifully for the 24-hour in April. So things were moving forward. I had confidence with my speed. I had to back that I would have the endurance in my legs through the years of running, as well as the Cairns to Melbourne, which was about, I guess, by that point, 10 months earlier. And so, okay, let's give it a crack. And to be able to run 200K, that was really, really special. So we got it done. On that 24-hour run, that's also where I met Joe Ward, who became my next coach. I connected with Joe at that event. I liked his energy. He was having fun while he was out there, but he was also a great runner. And he won that race with 230K. And so I hit him up about a week later and asked if he could coach me to the Run Around Australia for my remaining 11 months, because my dates were set. It wasn't going to move. It was March 10, and we worked together closely before the Run Around Australia to make sure that I was ready to go. And so my next race after Coburg was the BVRT, and that was 200 miles, BVRT 200. And to be able to do that, run 200 miles nonstop, I didn't know if I could. I ran that race with my mate Geordie, and I thought, let's just try and go the distance. If we can run 200 miles, that would be astronomical. The reason I signed up for this 200-mile race is early 2023, David Goggins came to Melbourne. And in life, I believe we have mentors that we are lucky enough to meet, but we also have mentors that we haven't yet met. And obviously I had mentors like Samantha Gash, like Dave Alley, like Matt Daniels, who I don't think I mentioned earlier. He'd run 55 marathons in 55 days, and he helped me before the 50 and 50 once that goal was set. So I'm always on a mission to try and find people and learn from them. And I've had great mentors along the way, but David Goggins was also a mentor for me. He was someone that I had never met, but yet I'd learned so much through his podcasts, through his audio books. I was really inspired by Goggins, but all of his teachings, like the cookie jar and the accountability mirror, they were very powerful. So I was at Goggins, and I remember thinking at the time, I was there with a few friends, and I remember thinking, if this guy can run Moab 240 miles off knee surgery, he can go out and do that, then I can do 200 miles. I've done 24-hour runs. I'd done two 24-hour runs at that point. I hadn't yet done the 24-hour run that I was going to do, the Coburg 24-hour. But I was in this position where I thought, you know what? Maybe I can. Let's give it a go. What if? And that's one thing that David Goggins always talks about. What if? You've got to ask yourself, what if? Don't look back and regret. What if I can? And so that's what I thought. Well, let's give it a go. Because if I can run 200 miles, if I can go the distance and run that far, 322 kilometers, then on the other side, I'll be thinking, then what's 80K a day? What is 80K a day running around Australia, which is what I needed in terms of average to break the record and become the fastest person to do it. At Goggins though, I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run a 200 miler. But the other thing it inspired me to do was go, you know what? I'm going to go for 84 Ks a day. 80K a day around Australia would get me to the record. But that feeling of hitting a double marathon every day, that would be really special. I didn't run 84K a day. There was some bigger days, some 84K days and some smaller days. But by the end of running around Australia, I was able to average 84 Ks a day. So I remember being at Goggins, and he would just pumped me up, and he made me believe that I was capable of more. And going home, it was when I was in the car with my friends, Liz, G, and Adrian. And I remember I booked my 200 miler. I booked the BVRT 200 miler then and there. I wanted to make the commitment to myself. What do they say? If you feel motivated, you have to do something about it. So you have to take one action. You know, if you are thinking about skydiving, book a ticket. I had to do it. I was like, I'm signing up for this race, and then there's no backing out. And I was talking to my mate Geordie. He was keen to do it too. And we said, let's run 200 miles, mate. Let's see how we go. So I only had 8 weeks between Coburg 24-hour and the BVRT 200 miler. But there was something between as well. So through our partnership at JDS with the Bali Hope Ultra, I was invited to the Bali Hope as an ambassador and as a coach of the runners. So I went over there, I gave them a lot of advice through the week, and it was special to be there because a lot of our runners were taking on the race, and I could see in person how they would go. To be able to connect with so many people, go back and do the event that I did in 2019, see how much money had been raised for Bali Children Foundation over the years and the impact that it had for schools and disadvantaged communities. It was really cool to go back. And I remember at the end of the run just thinking, okay, I'm really confident now. Like, the results are here. I think we had first place, third place, fourth place, sixth, seventh in the Bali Hope. And it just gave me real confidence. And so to be there and see our runners do so well, experience such a great week, but also to be able to go over in the capacity that I did. I didn't race the Bali Hope Ultra. I knew that I had the BVRT coming up. So what I did was run 106K 3 weeks out from BVRT. I looked at the Bali Hope Ultra as an opportunity to be my longest run before the 200 miler. And Bali Hope Ultra is 84 Ks, but I wanted to make sure that I ran a little bit with every single runner. Being the ambassador, that was really important to me, is make sure that every single runner on the course feels supported. So that's what I did. I ran up and back that 84K course to make it 106 all up. It was a big day out there, all night, I should say. I think I started at 5:30 p.m. The race is really cool how there's 3 different waves. There's a 5:30 start, 7:30 and 9:30. I honestly think it is the best ultra marathon. If you're thinking about taking that next step from a marathon to an ultra, it's one where you're so well supported. You've got different starting waves, as I mentioned. What race do you have different starting times to cater for your ability? It's also got a support crew and aid station every 3 to 5K, because the vehicles roll with the runners as they go forward from one end of Bali to the other. When I finished the 106K on Sunday morning, clearly I hadn't learned my lesson from 2 years earlier when I did the 4x4x48, because what I did was I trained with the Bali Geckos on the Wednesday night. So I still love footy, and that's an AFL team over there in Bali. So I went and had a kick, and I was doing some hard efforts, almost like intervals, whether it was to try and run away from someone or to tackle someone. So it was silly to put my body under that stress days after a 106K race, but it also gave me confidence at the same time that look how well I've recovered. I'm able to do this just a few days after the race. So I felt like, I don't know how I'm going to go with the BBRT 200 miler, but if I can just show up and be as fresh as possible and give my all, well, let's see what happens. And there was only 6 people in the race. It's a very small event. Most people do the 100 miler. It's a very small event. There was only 6 people in the 200 mile race, and there was a optional early start time, and then there was the main start time. And so because I didn't know how long I was going to take if I was to run the whole way and get there, I thought, let's start with the early start. So that started at 6 p.m. Well, it was meant to be 6 p.m. It started at 6:09 p.m. And then there was a midnight start. And not even kidding, I remember getting to Yarraman, which was the halfway point. So you run from Ipswich, 100 miles to Yarraman, and then 100 miles back to Ipswich. And I remember getting to Yarraman with my mate Geordie, and there was another runner who came in after us and was there when we were there, and she had started in the midnight time, so 6 hours after me. Her name was Jonah. Absolutely amazing. And I was thinking, wow, 6 hours she's gained. She's got that. She's going so well. And she got out of Yarraman even before we did. And so I remember thinking, well, just run your own race. Like, it's all about going the distance for you. Let's see what happens. But what ended up happening was, with about 85K to go, unfortunately, she got sick and had to go to hospital with rhabdo. And I had maintained a lower intensity. I'd been conservative because I didn't know if I would be able to go the distance, and ultimately went on to win that race. And in the end, only 2 out of 6 finished. Unfortunately, my mate George had to DNF after about 200 Ks as well. With extreme fatigue. He was falling over, sleeping while we were running. But just what a phenomenal experience. It was 53 hours, 21 minutes and 37 seconds. And when I did that, when I achieved that, that was when I knew. And so people might think, well, why would you run 200 miles? What's that got to do with the future goal of running around Australia? It had everything to do with it. That run was the run that really gave me the belief, and not even just the belief, that run was really the run that gave me the knowing that I was going to do this. And it was special to feel that way. It was like, fuck. I felt, fuck, if I can run 200 miles and my body can hold up and I can get this done, then we are going to give this run around Australia one hell of a crack. When I returned home from the BBRT 200 miler, I knew that just 2 weeks later I was heading back to Queensland, and that was for the Gold Coast Marathon. But this time not to race hard, not to go for a PB, but to pace one of our runners, Maddie. And it's something that I like to try and do from time to time with our runners at JDS, is actually jump in and help them out and help them get to their goal time. So we went and did a 3-hour 33 marathon 2 weeks after I ran the 200 miler, and we were striving towards a 3:30. We fell just that little bit short, but Maddie had one hell of an effort. And to be able to do that, and again, recover and feel good after the 200 miler, then do that, I was like, okay, we are so ready for this. And for work at the time, I was no longer bartending because I was back in Melbourne. I was not really doing personal training. I would do shifts occasionally, but ultimately I was run coaching, and I built our clients, which was great. So I was coaching people with tailored programming for their goals. And that was pretty much it for my work. I would have an occasional speaking gig as well in schools or a corporate business. And it was from really hard work in that time, spending my days working on First 42K. But it was also because we built a podcast. We built the First 42K podcast, which then in August 2023, that was my last episode, and unfortunately had to stop the podcast, but it is something that I might do again in the future. I really enjoyed doing those episodes, but something had to give. It was August 2023, and I was so stressed trying to organize this run around Australia that was my priority outside of my own training and, of course, coaching our athletes. So there was only so much time that I had, and I had to make a big decision, and it was the podcast that had to go. There was only 8 months until the date that I'd set to run around Australia, so I had to really get to work with trying to organize sponsors and organize my support crew and everything that would be required logistically to run around Australia. You know, having my body and mind prepared was one thing, but that's only one small part of it. The other big part of it as well is also the logistics around running around Australia. How are you actually going to do it? And I learned so much from that first run from Cairns to Melbourne. One of the biggest things that I learned was that we needed to have 2 motorhomes. And that was because if we had one motorhome and it was me and my support crew in the morning, well, there might have been me and 2 others or me and 3 others. But if someone's in the bathroom, for example, at the caravan park, well, we can't leave until we were all ready to go. So then we're dependent on all of us being ready. And what I learned from that is, well, what if I had a second motorhome? What could happen is I could wake up in the morning, I could be exhausted, but I could have just one person drive me to the start line from the spray paint from where I finished the night before, and I'd be good to go again. And then that way crew could sleep in, we could rotate, they would get more rest and recovery while we were doing it as well. And at the end of the day as well, I was thinking if we have 2 motorhomes, well, one could go ahead and they could start cooking dinner. So whether we were staying at a caravan park or a free campground, it was just, if that could be organized, then it's going to be easier for everyone, not just me as the runner, but for everyone. Even the people who were still out there crewing me right till the end of the day, we could get there, dinner was sorted, and it meant that the crew had more downtime as well. So logistically, I learned so much from Cairns to Melbourne. That was one thing that I knew that we would have to do. But running around Australia was going to cost some money. So I had to really work hard on trying to sell myself for sponsorship as well. And so having businesses invest in the run, believe in me and believe in what I'm doing for Make-A-Wish, and decide, okay, like this is something that I want to put my name behind. And so that was what I was doing. I was focused on trying to pull this run around Australia together. I remember I was trying to do so much and I wasn't having any success. And I'd been trying to organize sponsors for 6 years with this thing, with this run around Australia. It was a 6-year goal that I'd reverse engineered. And we're sitting here 104 days out and I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? I only had one sponsor commit to me at that point, and that was LSKD. And I was so grateful for their help, but I needed to keep pushing. I needed to try and find some support and try and find some additional sponsors, and some more sponsors came through, and it was really beautiful to see how it unfolded so close to the run as well. And it was nice to be gaining some momentum. But then I ran into another massive challenge. When 49 days out, I developed a tibia stress fracture in my right leg. And I could not believe my luck. I was absolutely gutted. I was thinking, how am I going to do this? And one of the hardest things about that was I couldn't tell people, because I was trying to get sponsorship for the Run Around Australia. I sat in a meeting with a sponsor, and it was about 3 or 4 weeks out from the run. And they're like, how are you feeling? You're ready to go, March 10? I'm like, yep, ready to go, pumped. And not even kidding, under the table, I was holding my shin in pain with my tibia. So it was a very tough time for me. And it was something where I just had to have this blind faith that we can pull this off. I can do this. And I have to manage the start of the run because I'm still going to be sore, but hopefully my body can just adapt as I go, and I can trust that 6 years of work has gone into this. I'll be able to get there. And I worked hard with my coach Joe to build a plan where my body could adapt gradually. And so I didn't want to run huge Ks at the beginning. I still started over 80 Ks a day, but I built those Ks up as I went. And I also started with 12 and 3. So I'd run for 12 minutes and walk for 3 minutes. Later into the run, I didn't need to do that anymore. It was more the Shawnee Shuffle. But that was something that while I was experiencing this tibia stress fracture, I needed to do. And I think that the body only knows stress. If you're trying to do so much, then something's got to give. And in October 2023, I met my beautiful girlfriend, Chloe, and that was such a beautiful thing to happen. And I couldn't believe how this was happening. Like, I'm 6 months away from running around Australia and I meet this girl. I haven't had a girlfriend for 6 years, and I meet this girl that I've been looking for. And what are the chances with timing that I'm about to run around the country and this is what's happened? So it was a lot. It was obviously, I was trying to see Chloe as much as I could and be there and give to her, but also I was trying to give to our run coaching athletes and make sure that they're supported with their programming and their goals. I was trying to train and make sure that I was ready for this run around Australia. I was trying to pull the sponsors together. I was trying to organize support crew. There was so much happening. And that's why I believe I developed a stress fracture, because in 6 years, I'd barely been injured outside of the perineal injury when I did my first 24-hour run, outside of the calf tear after the 4x4x48 challenge. I didn't really have any injuries. And here I was 7 weeks away from the biggest event of my life that I've committed to for 6 years, and now I get injured. I think there's a few reasons why that happened, and the main one was I was just trying to take too much on. You can't push your body through massive training, which I was doing anywhere from 90 to 120K weeks and heaps of strength work as well, if you're also trying to do so much, because something's got to give. And that's what happened. My body couldn't handle it. And ultimately, when you're trying to take on so much, you're not recovering well, you're high stress, you're not sleeping well, probably not eating as well as you could be. And that's what happened. And I developed this tibia stress fracture, and it's 7 weeks out and I'm thinking, well, I need to keep my conditioning up for this run. So come race day, I'm not unfit. And I worked really closely with Yanni from Pivot Sports Performance, my physio of many years. And we developed this game plan where I could strength train the rest of my body, keep my body as strong as possible, but look after that tib. So I wasn't running. It was a tough time. Here's this guy who's announced to the world he's about to run around Australia. He's telling people on social media, because I was trying to build up the audience for the run so people would donate to Make-A-Wish, trying to bring in sponsors. And yet at the same time, I put my Strava on private because I could not run. That was hard. All of a sudden, where I'd built so much confidence from 6 years of hard work, my confidence was shattered and I was filled with self-doubt. And I had to have this blind faith that, you know what, I can't move the date. One of the reasons why I couldn't move the date was because Apollo had committed to be a major sponsor, and they'd given us a van. They lent us a van for 6 months in running around Australia. So they needed me to run with those dates because they couldn't change the dates due to other people hiring the vans. And that's just one example. But due to that example, due to also support crew who'd committed to take annual leave, time off their work to be on the run, the dates weren't changing. I was set that no matter what, I'm starting March 10. I'm going to have to just see how I go and hope, cross my fingers, that my body will hold up. And then we got to the run itself. And on the morning of day one, I started at 5 a.m. And I'm not even joking. At 4 a.m. when I was having breakfast, I was finishing programming for one of our girls, one of our athletes at JDS Run Coaching, well, first 42K at the time. And that's how pushed I was right till the start of this event. So in some ways, I actually felt like I'm so glad this is happening, because as hard as this is going to be, all I have to focus on now is the run. Just focus on running. I've got an amazing team in my corner to help with food and drinks and all of that. But I had to push my business aside, and thankfully my business partner DJ and Coach Ursh were able to service our clients while I was running around Australia. So that was a beautiful experience. If I thought Cairns to Melbourne was beautiful being in my own world, this was another level again. It was something that I will forever cherish. And to do it for so long, to run for 6 months, to do my thing and have that opportunity, it's something that I don't take for granted. Yes, it was hard, but it was also like, this is the greatest. I'm out here living my dream. Very few people in life get to live their dreams, and I am fully aware of that. So because of that, I was like, I am incredibly grateful. I'm going to soak it up as hard as this is. Let's enjoy every single minute. And I think going into the run with an attitude of just being so stressed, it was hard for my body to heal. But then on the run, yes, it was hard, but I was able to relax. I was able to lean into the run. I was able to gradually build up my Ks per day, gradually progress from the 12.3 to shuffling all the time, and get into a bit of a quicker run. I started the MCG and it's a 39-degree day. I kicked off at 5 a.m. and it's 28.4 degrees. I'm thinking, how is this the weather on day one? And then sure enough, day two, 39 degrees as well. And from there, the weather started to get better. But my first 2 days were brutal. And on day two, I started running at 4 a.m. because I was trying to beat the heat after realizing how hard it was the day before. So I wanted to at least get some Ks done while it was a bit cooler. And I spewed violently twice by 5:30 a.m. thinking, this is going to be so tough. I really thought, how am I going to do this? Because the only thing that I could stomach as well was Coca-Cola. I had, I think, 8 cans of Coke that day. And that day, I still managed to get 80K. And I remember when I hit the end of the day, we went back to a caravan park and there was a pool at the front of the caravan park. It would have been a 50-meter walk from where we set up the motorhomes. And I needed to lay down under a tree and try and have a nap before I could then go in the pool. Even though my body and skin was so hot that I wanted to cool down in the pool, I was that exhausted. And that was day two. So that was a real wake-up call where it's like, this is going to be so hard. I hope you know, and I hope you're ready for it. And I had to rely on the mindset that I'd built over these many years that was like, okay, no matter what, one day at a time. And break it down further than that. Let's go even 8K at a time. Break it down step by step if you need to, but break this goal down because that's what's going to be required to ultimately get through this run around Australia. While I knew from previous experience with the 50 and 50 and the Cairns to Melbourne run that the first 2 weeks were going to be really hard, they still surprised me with how hard they were. It was so tough. And it wasn't till about nearly 3 weeks in that my body started to really adapt. And I thought, okay, this is nice. I'm feeling better. I'm recovering well. I'm feeling fitter. This is good. I'd lost some weight. I definitely went into the run a little bit heavier than I would have liked, but that came with doing so much strength work. I couldn't help but put on some size. And I forgot to mention that before, but I think that was also one of the contributors to my stress fracture in the tibia, is that I was running heavier than I usually do. So there were many things at play. I think the biggest challenge running around Australia was nausea. I felt sick all the time and there was nothing really that I could do to shake it. And it was like mainland Australia, 166 days. I would have spewed 130 days. Like it was crazy, and sometimes multiple times a day. And so that was fucking nuts. And then Tasmania as well. I would have spewed another 4 or 5 times across those 8 days. While my body was more used to running 84 Ks a day now, I was also running north, and that meant it was only going to get hotter, more humid and harder. And there was more violent spews. There were more days where I could only eat ice cream and drink soft drink. It was so hard. I mean, they made up in some of those days where it was Queensland and Northern Territory and say the top of WA near the Pilbara region. That was a lot of my diet, which is crazy, but that's what I had to do. I remember around day 50, around Mount Isa, I had this sharp pain in my left foot, and we didn't have a physio on the run. We didn't have a podiatrist on the run. So I could only call my experts back home and ask them for advice and what do we do. And we pretty much just were winging it every day. It's one of the things that I love about ultra running. It's problem solving. And so we had rigid tape, rigid sports tape. We would tape my foot a few times to be able to give a bit of space between my forefoot or the ball of my foot and the ground. So I run with that 4-foot strike. I wanted to try and have some padding and protection. Little did I know that was probably the start of Freiberg's, which is what I've got now, and I'll talk more about that soon. But day 50, I was feeling some real pain in my left foot, and we continued to push through that. I pushed through that for another 124 days when you consider the run being 166 and then Tassie being 8 days. But it was something that I knew I was in it and I had to play my role. And people say, but how did you do it every single day? How did you back it up? There were days where I was talking to the camera first thing in the morning and I felt drunk almost. I was almost swaying with fatigue, because to try and push your body that hard all the time, not be sleeping properly, get up, go again. I always say to people I was running on passion and caffeine, and sometimes that meant pushing through whatever was in front of me. And that was foot pain, that was throwing up, that was dodging road trains. There was a lot of things at play. And we had some other challenges on the run. I had to deal with some things in the background, which I didn't expect to deal with, some business challenges. I had some issues with some support crew as well, some amazing support crew, but I think it's hard when you're running for so long, you're in such a confined space. These things are always going to happen. So, I think that there was a lot of, there's a lot of learnings from this. And if I was ever to do something like this again, there'd be a lot of things that I could do better. But at the same time, I'm proud because I'm just doing my best. It's crazy when I look back at the run around Australia, and it's like the best I ran was from Broome to Perth. I was running the most Ks per day on average, sort of around that 87, 88 Ks a day. And I was in such a beautiful rhythm, and it definitely changed once I hit Perth and started heading home. My body really started to fail me, but to have that experience, it was like I've built up for so long and now I'm just in this beautiful position, and this is really good. So I was grateful to have met James along the West Coast as well, and his little daughter has had leukemia, so he was inspired by the run, inspired by the work that Make-A-Wish are doing, and to be able to run with him and hear his story was very sad but also very powerful. It inspired me to continue putting one foot in front of the other and be the best I can be and try and make a real difference for these families, because these are real people with real heartbreaking stories. And that's just what I had to remind myself is I'm choosing to do this. I'm choosing to hurt, and these families aren't. This is really unfortunate. It's devastating. Play your role here. And my support crew were playing theirs. They were all doing so much. And, we had 32 crew members over the run. 32 crew members who'd contributed, and that's crazy. That's a lot of people giving up a lot of time from their own lives to come away and help a man run around Australia. For that, I was so grateful. It's something I will cherish forever, because you can't run around Australia without a team. Or at least not how I did it. I mean, I think if you were trying to do your own solo event, it would have to be significantly less Ks a day and things like that. But we were a well-oiled machine. We were a team who were so onto our roles. We knew exactly what we had to do, whether it was someone driving ahead to cook dinner, whether it was taping my feet, we were just playing our part. And the team is not just the people on the road. The team is the people who've built me up over the years to get to there. It's also the sponsors who've contributed to the run. It's also the sponsors of Make-A-Wish, as in the people who've donated to Make-A-Wish, who inspired me every single day with messages. I was always reading your messages and seeing the donations come through, because we made that difference. We helped make hundreds of wishes come true, not me. And that was beautiful to be able to read that. So it was such a team effort. It's like I'm sitting here now 3 months on, and I'm still really trying to find the words. It's something that I think it will take time to sink in. A lot's changed since the run around Australia. We've rebranded. We've gone from First 42 to JDS Run Coaching. And as I mentioned, in early 2023, we were coaching people to run 84 Ks across Bali. So we had some people doing that. I remember I was coaching another guy, Austin, over in the US to do a 12-hour run. There was a lot of ultra marathon coaching as well. And then, of course, some shorter distance 10K half marathon. So I thought, we need to have a business name that reflects who we are and what we do, and that's more than First 42K. Yes, we still help a lot of first timers run their first marathon, and that will always be something that we love to do. But at the same time, we had evolved and we needed our name to reflect that. So I remember being on the run, and I was on the 90-mile straight, and I was thinking about everything that our runners say. And the main thing is that you helped me love running. You showed me the importance of discipline. And when I applied my love for running and I was disciplined, I was consistent. And with that consistency, success was inevitable. So I looked at that and was like, that is joy, discipline, success. And that is who we are. And it's also, a lot of people don't know this, but a beautiful tie back. It's Jace, DJ, and Sean as well. So a lot's changed, as I mentioned. We've rebranded First 42 to JDS. I've also got a moon boot at the moment, and it's quite a big boot. I've got a big foot. I've got Freiberg's. I mentioned earlier, I'll talk about that a little bit more. Freiberg's is where the head of the metatarsal becomes flat due to repeated trauma and insufficient blood supply to the bones. So it's nasty. I find out my fate next Friday. I've got a appointment with a forefoot surgeon, or a foot surgeon in general. So that's going to be big. I don't know how long it'll be that I'm out for running, but it is what it is. I was able to live my dream. I was able to have, this journey of a lifetime. And for that, to push my body so hard, there was always going to be a cost. There's a cost for everything in life. And this is the price that I have to pay now. So there's positives though. There's some beautiful changes in my life. I've moved to Sydney. I'm living with my partner, Chloe. We did long distance for 6 months. So to be able to live with her, that's really nice. And for work, I mentioned JDS and the rebrand. We're coaching athletes right now. I also am back on the speaking circuit and have been doing some speaking gigs to schools. I've got 2 corporate gigs this week, Solid Foundation Concreting and Harcourts Real Estate. So it's exciting. We're moving in the right direction. I'm following my passion and just trying to take those small steps every single day towards our goals, because we have to keep showing up and we have to believe in ourselves. There's so many times in life where I've had to have that belief and blind faith. And, I think that was really shown in those 7 weeks before the run when I was injured. I was nearly in tears on so many nights thinking, how has this happened? But I have to find a way. I can't move the date, so I just have to start and just have to see what happens. And blind faith throughout the run when things were falling apart as well. I just had to keep going. Ultimately, we got there. We broke the world record. We raised $166,000 for Make-A-Wish, and now I'm on the other side of that. And it's an interesting part of life, my life to be in. It's an interesting chapter. So many people have asked me what's next already. I don't know what's next. I think I would love to do backyard ultras one day when my body's healed. I'd also love to do some fast marathons. I've signed up to Gold Coast 2025. Whether I'll get there or not, I'm not sure. I hope that my body is all right by then. But I'm missing that speed work. Like after Cairns to Melbourne, I'm missing running fast and keen for that challenge when my body is ready. But for now, it's about healing. It's about trying to focus on some other areas of my life, like my relationship and my business and speaking. So there's a lot happening. I'm working hard and I'm doing my best. And I hope that you're out there getting after it and chasing your goals and dreams as well. Because if you can remember where I started out, I was a bench warmer playing football. And in the space of 10 years, I've become this person who could hold an average of 84 Ks a day around Australia for nearly 6 months. And it's taken work. It's taken so much hard work, but it's also taken strategic work, like coaches and mentors along the way, people who've lit the path before me, who are great runners, who are coaches, who could give me that advice and say, hey mate, do this or do that. And like, it's one of the biggest things that I've learned. And so I'm now looking to do the same and get coaches and mentors in other areas of my life as well, because it's a game changer. And I think that in life, we should be trying to find people who have walked the path that we want to walk, whether that is in business, whether that's in health and fitness, whatever it is. So I hope you found this video valuable and also educational. I hope that you've learned something. I hope that you have learned something about me that you didn't know before. I hope you've learned something about running that you didn't know before. And it's just been a journey. And I think that if I was to think back to year 12. When I was in year 12, I set the goal to become a PE and outdoor ed and health teacher. And look, maybe that still may happen in the future. I don't know. But all I do know is this. I was 18 years old and I thought that my future would be living in Vermont, the suburb that I grew up. I thought I'd be teaching at Vermont and I thought that I'd be playing footy for Vermont. I never thought that 9 years after that was 2015, I was in year 12. I never thought that 9 years after that, I could become a record holder for running around Australia at an average of 84 Ks or 2 marathons a day for 166 days. But that is what is possible when you work your ass off, when you believe in yourself, when you get a team around you to buy into your vision and you work together. And it's been such an amazing journey. I need to respect where I'm at right now, recover, and look forward to setting some new goals in my life. And I hope that you're killing it as well, and chasing your goals and dreams, because to me, that's what life is about. Yes, we have responsibilities, we have obligations in life and things to do, but at the same time, make sure you're living a life that lights you up, because we only get one life. And I hope you know this. Life's not about how long you live, it's about how you live while you're here. So giddy up. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.